All right, so here's my introduction to collaging. We're starting out with the basic materials that we recommend. So you're going to want to start out with some just kind of thick, sturdy piece of cardboard that you can really, glue on, cut on, place on top of a table, and know that you can work with your X-Acto knife and moving all of your pieces of materials around and protect your space. I also really recommend getting something like an old phone book or yellow pages with these really thin pages, because if you're going to glue the back of a picture, you can place it like upside down on here and then glue over it. The glue gets on the side pages, and then you just rip the page out and you can use the next one, because you don't want to have glue all over your surface and then end up getting the glue on the fronts of your pictures. I also recommend getting some like nice sturdy cardstock like this, and you can get larger pieces or you can kind of cut them down to these standard sizes, and these can actually serve as a background if you want to do a smaller piece or a larger piece. You kind of know what space you're working with. And it can also be super handy if you have a guide like this that kind of fits around the size that you're wanting to make your piece on, so that if you want to cut a background down to that size, you can use this window to kind of place and say, do I want it up there or down here or sideways? And then you cut that out and you can build on top of it. So this can be really handy to have, and it's easy to make out of a piece of cardboard. Basic tools, I recommend a glue stick just to be able to run over the backs of the pictures like was demonstrated on the phone book pages, and it's really quick drying. I actually really like using curls of Scotch tape when I make my pieces, because I do a lot of moving all of the pictures down, and once they're glued down you can really cause damage trying to move them. So most of my pieces are actually just taped together. It gives you more flexibility. Hand scissors are great for cutting out images in detail. And I also love my X-Acto knife, which is part of why we have this cardboard. You can get really clean lines, especially if you use like the edge of a book or a guide to get a straight cut. And you can also do a lot of great detail work, like if you want to cut the background out of some trees. I also cheat a little bit with my collaging, just having maybe like a black marker or a pen or a pencil. Sometimes when you place images on top of one another, the edges are white and can show up, so it's nice to have something to darken those edges so that things blend a little better. But those are really your basic supplies for creating a collage, and then you just need the materials for starting. And I recommend having a nice collection of things that you can use as backgrounds. So calendars are amazing for this. You have a big like 6x6 or 9x9 just picture that's a beautiful scene that can be a backdrop for all sorts of other things. Nature things are great to be able to use. And then you pretty much just layer. You might want to use this as a background, or you might want to cut the bison out and say, you know what, I'm feeling called to putting a bison in the desert. That's just feeling right to me. Or I had a dream of a giant alligator climbing out of a ravine, and so I went and I found an alligator and cut it out and was like, where does he fit? Does he want to be in the desert? Does he want to be hanging out here? I'm not sure. So once you have your basic backgrounds and then the individual images that you want to place on top of that, you can build something relatively quickly. And so if you wanted to place it like that and then just say, oh, yeah, that's feeling really moody. It's reflecting something I feel that I can't quite put into words. I think I'm just going to tape that down, cut it out around the guide, put it on the back of one of these puppies, And then if you have a couple of these little cellophane sleeves, you can get a bunch of these online for pretty cheap. You just slip it in there and you got your own little piece of decor or tarot card. So I learned this process through Soul Collage and created some of my own cards, and these are some of the things that came out of this through using just the backgrounds and then layering. It's very moody. And what's great is you can pull these out after you make them and say, you know, I feel like I have a question, or I'm stuck with something, and these images can speak to you after the fact. And so it's just colored cellophane and layering. And this was how I got introduced to collage. You can make one or a couple of these at the same time, just going through a collection of images and seeing what's drawn, what you're feeling drawn to, and just putting them together. Quick, easy intro project. If you want to start getting a little bit more fancy pants, I have loved having a paper cutter, just so that I can get things really squared as I'm working on larger pieces. And again, for larger pieces, you can use a larger piece of cardboard, or you can even just start taping some of these multiple backgrounds together. And sometimes getting those to blend can be a little bit of a challenge. You have to get a little creative with it, especially if it's a natural scene as opposed to a more abstract one. So just to give you an example of this is a larger piece that I did and had framed, which is more of an abstract piece. It's several backgrounds pieced together and then really working with some of those really clear boundaries for an emotional effect, and then really working in other areas to do blending. So this is actually several pieces that have been blended together using smaller pieces of paper to blend. This is also a whole bunch of little pieces, as you can see, just trying to get that shading right. And then this woman with the dress, I actually wasn't planning to create this at all, and had just a pile of images on the floor, and they all landed in this position. It was just a piece of the woman here and then some of these other random pieces, and I'm like, ugh, that's a woman, that's a dress, let's make a piece out of this. And then you have larger pieces that are more nature-based that can get more challenging in terms of how to do the blending. So I'm going to turn to see if we can get all of this. So we have this lovely, dark, moody piece that I actually created intentionally because I wanted to explore the relationship between bison and whale. And so this is actually several background pieces that are blended together. You have the ocean scene, you have this gloomy marsh, and then you have the underwater with the kelp and the whale. I want to actually move this into the light so you can see it a little better. It's still pretty gloomy. Oh, and now we've got this pretty intense reflection. Let me see if I can get that in a better spot. Nope, that's worse. This is a hard time of day to be doing this. But I can zoom in here, and you see how there's blending that I've done here to try to make the waters blend together with lots of little pieces. And then this is also a bunch of really small pieces here, trying to create the boundary between above water and below water, and then using these bits of kelp in order to create blending. And then taking the motif of these hills here and creating a whole nother hill out of scrap, so that it really looks seamlessly as though Bison is walking from one side to the other, and that the water that he's walking through is actually kind of blending underneath. So yeah, that's an example of a larger, more ambitious project. And this is another example of multiple pieces. And this, I want to say it's a good maybe 2 feet tall, with just different layers of flowing. I built the tree out of bits of branches from a number of different trees, and then just working with getting the waterfalls flowing several different clips from waterfalls coming down underneath, and just working with colors and textures to try to get it to blend as much as possible. And so as you begin creating pieces, you will have more materials to work with, you know, gathering a lot of these different types of backgrounds that can be used. And then as you start clipping out images, you're going to have lots of really neat little bits and pieces to use. You might have more abstract images like these to work with, or you might have more nature-based images. And so I've got this cool collection of doors that I didn't end up needing, gravel, you know, brick, just general textures that you can use for blending or for just creating more abstract pieces. And I save all these little bits because who knows when they might come in handy. The other thing I do is every once in a while I'll go to the craft store and buy a bunch of calendars and magazines and just cut everything out and create files. So I have my file that's all animals. So if there's a particular animal I'm looking for, or I'm just wanting to see what I'm in the mood for, you know, I've got fish, I've got a rhinoceros beetle and an iguana and spiders, just all ready to go. Sometimes people create piles of files with images with people. I don't tend to work a lot with people myself, but those can be really powerful. You know, just different feelings and moods that can come out that I can use depending on what's coming up for me. And then nature scenes, religious symbols, technology, whatever you're feeling called to. I have my little symbols and images one. You know, these can be great in little inspirational cards. You know, and it's relatively inexpensive. I think I spent maybe $30 at the craft store and bought all of these and just had like a cutting out party with friends, and then just provide materials to everybody and you just go for it. And then it's also very compact. I mean, here's my entire collage box. Now I've got all my supplies in here, and then all of my images just get folded up there with some potential backgrounds, and it's just a really easy project to pull out and work with when I feel inspired. So yeah, I hope this was a helpful video for getting you started, and if you would like to learn more about the process or get some more guidance, or even better, have some reflection and discussion about the pieces that you create and what meanings might be hidden in them, definitely let me know. Nancy Alder, innerwoven.net, INNERWOVEN.net. Happy crafting.